I'm just going to say that there have been so many things that have happened under Jay Oliphant's watch that he really should have had or is over. And yet some things went on for rather protracted periods. You may have surmised that race relations within Louisiana State Police are not the greatest in the world. And on some of these occasions, he was in a position to have tried to abate that or try to mitigate it, and appears to have done absolutely nothing. So I'm going to cover some people. We're going to give you links to all these events that took place under Jay Oliphant's leadership. But I'm not going to spend an extensive amount of time in this video on them, because you're welcome to click on the links. Many of them are from Channel 2, WBRZ, and Chris Nakamoto. And so if you want further details, I would encourage you to go there. Some of them will be some sound off links. But at any rate, we'll start with Kasha Domang. She's a trooper who shot a gentleman in the back, an unarmed gentleman. He is now paralyzed for life, and she is facing charges with regard to that in East Baton Rouge Parish. District Attorney Hiller Moore is the prosecutor. There's a direct link where you can get more if you would like. We'll move on to Jacob Brown. He is the son of Robert Brown, who held the position that Kenneth Van Buren, Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Van Buren, now holds. And you will see the link where he was recently arrested involving alleged excessive force. And that also involves an African-American gentleman, also up in the Monroe area, just as the third one that we'll talk about briefly. There was a lawsuit filed. I'm not going to go into all the details of the lawsuit because there were all kinds of service problems and this, that, and the other. We'll probably cover that at a later date. But the point is, he was over this area, okay, and yet this transpired and stayed in the dark for quite some time until the lawsuit was filed and his recent arrest, talking about Jacob Brown. I'll move on to Ronald Green. I would imagine that most people have heard the name Ronald Green. I would hope so. But rather than giving you an overview of what happened, I'm going to break away for a 22-second clip. This is former Louisiana State Trooper Chris Hollingsworth. I will warn you that the audio and the video that accompanies it is graphic, but we're going to break away for 22 seconds to let you see the situation with Ronald Green. We'll be right back. All right, that will give you just the gist of the Ronald Green situation, but which is far more troubling is the ever-increasing evidence that there was a cover-up here. That's become so apparent now that it's extremely difficult to try to argue against it. Everything from this was going to be written up, or probably was written up, as an accident, hitting a small shrub off the side of the road after the vehicle ran off, and so forth. That's under federal investigation from everything that's been told, or actually it's been said even by Colonel Davis on camera, so we'll have to assume that's the case. But troubling is the efforts by state police to not only not be forthright about what happened here, but even to be deceptive about it. And I'm going to elaborate in just a moment. Well, I'll save it. Let's move on. Next, we have August McKay. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because it's been in the news recently. We're going to give you links both to Chris Nakamoto's original feature about him allegedly referencing a colleague as an effing in. Again, I want to relay that the race problems that exist within state police, former Lieutenant Colonel Oliphant was in a position to at least try and negate some of this, and there is no evidence that he did anything. But at any rate, we have August McKay having allegedly referenced a colleague as an effing in, and then of course subsequently I'm sure everyone will be aware, and that's the second link with regard to August McKay. Apparently there was some drug activity that he was involved in when the Louisiana State Police went to serve him with a search warrant at his home. He managed to get to a place where he could commit suicide and did so. But there again, all of these have transpired under Jay Oliphant's watch. Now I'm going to move on. We have Caleb Reeves. Caleb Reeves is the son of the former the former colonel of state police, Kevin Reeves. We did a feature in January of 2019 with regard to Caleb Reeves getting a prestigious transfer. And I say prestigious because from everything I've been told, this doesn't happen unless you've been with the force for 7 years or so. And you got to bear in mind, special legislation had to be enacted to enable Caleb Reeves to be hired in the first place. And at the time, Colonel Reeves gave the assurance there would be no preference for his son, and yet he goes to this detective position. I will mention that Doug Kane, who then sort of ran public affairs, called me personally and let me know that this was not a promotion, that it was basically a lateral move, and I had troopers that told me, well, if that's the case, is he still out there patrolling like the rest of us? At any rate, Caleb Reeves, shortly after the Ronald Green incident, was involved he was heading to an accident, and regrettably, he himself wound up rear-ending some folks traveling in a vehicle, and unfortunately, the two rear seat passengers were killed as a result of that rear-ending. We're going to give you the link for all of the documentation pertaining to Caleb Reeves's fleet accidents, because there are more than one during his tenure at state police. You're just welcome to look over them if you would like. I want to move on now to Michael Lynn Satcher. We have covered that fairly extensively, and we'll give you the link for the most recent, that being his resignation over alleged domestic abuse. That next court hearing is on February the 25th, and it speaks for itself. I mean, from everything I'm being educated on, I had to pause to think of the right words, with regard to the air support unit of state police. I mean, it's got some problems, okay? And obviously this was one of them, but there are other features coming, so I'm not going to venture off onto that on this feature. But as everyone is aware, he did resign on effective December the 8th. In fact, as it pertains to Jay Oliphant, and there was quite a bit of interconnection, if you will, between then head of patrol for Troop F, that was Kevin Reeves's position at the time. He had to sign off on all of this, the incident report, and I'm not going to go into the detail. You had to. It's better to look at it in writing on there, and you're going to see the Facebook post, the whole 9 yards. I mean, there is so many problematic actions with regard to Jay Oliphant that I'm not going to. This thing would take quite some time, and I made a New Year's resolution to shorten these things. But I do want to conclude this video with one thing I want to save. This is just a small little sample of things you're going to find in these depositions. But I find this mind-boggling. So when you hear the question, that's going to be Jill Kraft, Calvin Braxton's attorney, posing the question. And then when you hear the answer, that would be, this is coming from the deposition of Jay Oliphant, okay? All right, I'm going to go ahead and read it. Y'all forgive me, I'm just going to read verbatim, beginning with a question posed by Ms. Kraft. In order to conduct a threat assessment, correct me if I'm wrong, but you engage in like the temperament of the person. You figure out if they have any psychological disorders, as much as you can. the environment surrounding them, whether or not they're armed with a weapon, things of that nature. Is that right? I don't know. I don't do SWOT assessments. I'm not sure. You have done them before, though, haven't you? No, I haven't. And you are currently the head of SWAT? Is that right? That's under your control? SWAT does fall under my control, yes. And I'll leave it at that. Okay, now I would like to attribute this to just be mere incompetence on the part of former Colonel Kevin Reeves, promoting somebody to these levels who readily admits, given some credit, at least he told the truth under oath, that he's never done one of these, okay, and yet he's over it, okay? And I think you're starting to see the prospects for former Lieutenant Colonel Oliphant having got where he got, not as a result of knowledge and ability, but perhaps as a reward for being the good little soldier. And I'll let it go at that.